My name's Josh. I'm a co-host on The Imperfects, the son of Sri Lankan and English immigrants, and I grew up on and am now raising my children on Wurundjeri country. I'd like to recognise the traditional peoples of this continent whose land was stolen nearly 250 years ago. In particular, we at The Imperfects would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast was recorded, and we extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I'm inspired by the strength and endurance of the world's oldest living culture, and we at The Imperfects pay homage to the traditions of story when we share stories on our podcast.
The Imperfects invites you into a very safe place. A place where we share without judgment and drink heaps and heaps of vulnerability. Grab yourself a cup. This is the Vulnerability House.
I feel like out of everything in our podcast, that's the one part that I would understand if people played double speed, because it's very long. Every time I hear, I'm like, God, we could have sped that up a little bit. It does take a while.
If you speed that up, it might sound like something that today's guest would actually play as one of her sets.
True. Well, she's welcome to remix it, if that's how you would phrase it.
I could do it.
I bet you. Oh, you want to do it?
I'd love to do it. You'd sound great pitched up.
Really?
Don't you think?
Oh,
I reckon. Double speed.
It's very kind.
That's lovely.
What a lovely thing to hear. Wish I heard more of that. That's lovely. I'd be nice pitched up. Beautiful. Our guest today in the Vulnerability House is none other than Linda Marigliano. You may know her from her years at Triple J, the queen of Triple J, I think you were.
Thank you.
Would you say?
I reckon I'm royalty.
Yeah, you're Triple J royalty. Would you guys ever listen to Triple J when Linda was on?
Yeah, big time.
I feel like you were on when I was listening a lot.
Yep. Agreed. I was exactly the same.
That's because I did almost every single shift on that station.
Yeah, true.
That's what it was.
Did you ever do breakfast?
No, that was the one I never did.
Yeah.
And it was actually talked about numerous times.
Yeah.
Whenever there would be breakfast hosts that were kind of going and
Other
leaving.
directions, yeah.
And I would never be able to commit to the early alarms.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's a good enough reason. That's
Yeah.
in business meetings.
So I
to
did
say,
mornings, I did
yeah.
lunch, I did drive, I did the evening show,
Yeah.
I did mid-dawns when I first started.
Wow.
But never did breakfast.
It seems like a pretty good reason to not do breakfast, doesn't it? Like if they said, we want you to do breakfast and said, I don't want to get up early, there's not really anywhere for them to go there.
That was exactly it. I was like, I just can't do it. I'm going to sleep in. It's not going to happen.
But we want you to.
Yep, not going to happen.
Oh, she's good. What a negotiator. Well, Linda, thanks so much for being here in studio.
Thank you. Thank you for my cup of tea. Thank you for that very relaxing, zen-like
Pleasure.
introduction.
It gave you time to go out, go do some shopping. It's so long, that introduction,
Yep.
that you could do anything you want.
Went out, did the rounds.
I just feel like listening to you speak now and hearing your voice. I mean, I've heard it many times before, but I feel like when you're at school, when there was vocational counselling, they would have said to you, I'm sorry, you've only really got one choice with your voice. You're going to have to do radio.
Oh, how flattering.
It is. What a voice.
Yeah, it is.
I don't hear it. I hear my voice.
I hear your voice.
That's weird.
I can hear it
speak
through these
remarkably
headphones,
well.
but I don't hear it as like what a night. You should do.
Oh, you
should
should
do something.
sometime.
Yeah.
You should
I think
listen
I
to
just
it.
don't know how to shut up. So that was why I was like, I think I'll just talk for a living.
Yeah, well, you nailed it. And
Yeah.
here you are, talking again in the
God.
tea house.
Come on.
So, Linda,
Yes.
Vulnerability House.
Yeah.
You've been very kind to come on. I'll explain to you and the listeners as a reminder how this works. So in front of you is a deck of bluey cards. On all these cards are written questions, like hopefully questions that will induce vulnerable answers of sorts.
Yeah.
If you just pick the top 3 cards, they've been shuffled. And if any of those questions prompt any sort of vulnerability type answers or stories or memories, feel free to tell us about it. Like we always say, if you choose not to answer, we'll be really pissed off, but that's all cool too.
What a waste of time. Okay.
So,
Do I take the cards now?
yeah, go for it. And then just maybe read out each
So
one.
maybe just take
okay.
the top 3
Okay.
cards. And
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I can count.
Good.
It's good. Okay, top 1 is ooh. Okay, so this is on your handwritten post-it note on the bluey card.
Don't tell them that.
Oh, sorry.
Ruin
It's,
the illusion.
It's okay.
it's on calligraphy.
Thank you.
Calligraphy written
Yep.
on a post-it note. God, post-its just remind me of growing up, actually. That'll be some other story, I'm sure.
Oh, really?
Yep. We were a big post-it household. Okay.
Really? Oh, that's a fascinating tangent.
Big time. What parts of aging scare you most? Oh, that's very good. Okay. Second one, what fear would you like to be free of? Oh, that's very good. Last one. How did your mother and or father make you feel about yourself? Whoa.
Just some little life
Just
questions.
some small. I was hoping there'd be, what's your name?
Feel free to answer what your name if that feels
Okay.
most comfortable.
So I choose one of these.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow, I kind of feel like I could answer all of these. They're all very, very loaded.
We didn't mean them to be loaded.
I kind of feel. Look, I've been back in town spending a lot of time with my family, so I kind of feel like the mother or father one
Perfect.
might be
Yep.
kind of a fun one, and who knows, maybe that'll feed into fear and aging as well. So, how did your mother and or father make you feel about yourself?
Gosh. I mean,
It's almost too big to even try and answer, but maybe I can try. Well, the thing is that my mother and father made me feel, in some ways, there was some crossover in how I felt about myself growing up. I think the easiest thing was that I felt really proud of the different cultures that we came from, because mum and dad were from such kind of opposite ends of the world.
So where's that from? Where is
So dad is Italian,
Mm-hmm.
and his whole family had immigrated here from a real kind of farming lifestyle in Italy in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt very proud to be part of that Italian culture, and it was a really vibrant, incredibly close-knit family of grandparents, cousins, uncles, aunts, really frequent.
What part of Italy?
They were from a place called, I think it's called Passo Eclano, which is not far from Naples.
Okay. Yep.
So they were all from there and then immigrated here, and my dad and his brothers then all had their families here, and it's just this really kind of vibrant Italian culture that we were part of. And I feel like when we were growing up, we felt really proud of that and having that really colourful, totally revolving around food, and it was really loud and really boisterous kind of family. And then on the other side of that, we also felt really proud of having the mix of mum's Chinese Malaysian family. And while we didn't have the frequent interactions with them the way that we had with our Italian side, we would be deeply immersed in Chinese Malaysian culture because we would go and visit them every year.
Whoa. What a
So-
melting pot of different.
Yeah. And they were both, the thing is, they were both so different because they were on other sides of the world, but the values were the same. And I think that's what made us feel really kind of proud of where we'd come from, really obsessed with food,
Mm-hmm.
and similarly really not obsessed with, but the importance for us growing up was very much on family, food, and sort of hard work.
Mm-hmm. Whoa. Yeah.
How did your parents meet?
They met
Online?
Online. they were on Raya, actually.
Wow.
Really elitist.
Really impressive.
They met when mum had come to Australia for that whole kind of, for a better life. I can make some money. I can send it back to my tiny family in the village that's in Malaysia. She came to Sydney when she was, I think, 19, and she loved Italian food. So she started managing an Italian restaurant in King's Cross, and my dad was part of this Italian clan of bachelors that were all hairdressers in King's Cross, and they would all go to this Italian restaurant after they would finish work, and there was this stunning 20-year-old Chinese manager that was there.
And could they speak English? Like, was it English?
Mum could speak kind of like broken English, very strong accent. She has an accent now still, quite a strong Asian accent, but she could speak English. And my dad could speak English as well. So they spoke to each other in English, and she just kind of didn't take any bullshit from anyone. So all of the Italian men would come in, and I think they were all hit on her individually. And then my dad started coming in on his own and apparently was the most understated.
Played it cool.
Yeah, played it much cooler and was the nice guy. And that's how they ended up meeting.
Nice guys finish first.
That's right.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
It sounds to me that those kind of stories are almost like a bit of a thing of the past. I feel like most people just meet online now.
So,
That's lovely.
Yeah.
That's
it was very, 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 very sweet. So then, that's how they got together, and they had my brother and then I.
I feel like often you hear kids who grow up in Australia and they've got parents from different countries, different cultures. Often that's hard for kids, like in their school. Like often they might get teased for the food they bring, or that kind of classic, the racism that kids face in school. But you were like,
maybe it's just my perspective or the school that I grew up in. The school that I grew up in was in a suburb where there were loads of Italian kids, Greek kids, Lebanese kids, heaps of Asian kids.
Yeah.
And then, Anglo-Saxon families as well. And Chinese and Italian, they're almost that sort of, for my Australian friends anyway, they were the cultures that they knew about that were cool. Like if you
it's the food we ate.
It was the food you ate. Yeah. It was the kind of how do I say it? Like that sort of approachable exoticism.
Yeah. And it's probably like, as we grew up on American movies, often the type of food that would often appear in movies was like Chinese food or pizza.
Yeah.
Or, like they were the kind of like, I guess, approachable foods. Yeah.
So it's kind of lucky. Like I remember getting teased a little bit. Like I remember being called a wog a few times, or I remember a few boys when I was in year 3 would run around and like call me Buddha.
Buddha?
Wow. Which I got really upset about. Really upset.
Why did you get upset? About that specific? I
think, just because kids don't want to get teased
at
any time. Yeah. And I think because it was the first time that I'd ever really felt like an other.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen that often. And because my Italian family, my cousins looked Australian. Like my cousins were blonde and blue-eyed. And so they, again, like embodied that sort of approachable, even though different, just enough different that they're cool, but not too far.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess I remember being told that I looked Chinese and being called a name like that. And I just remember being really upset. And I remember going home and telling my mum, and she doesn't take any bullshit from anyone. She's a very, very strict, disciplined, black and white sort of person. And I remember her just being like, no, you're not getting upset about that. And
drove to school, beat the shit out of them.
Or I reckon she probably would have. And that was like the kind of good thing about having a mum like that. And then on the flip side, it was also that, I guess, and in line with this question, like how did your parents make you feel about yourself? On the one hand, my mum made me feel really empowered and really confident in who I was. But at the same time, there was such a pressure in being really resilient and hardworking and disciplined and like, yep, we can take anything. You can go to school. You're going to be the ducks of the grade. you're going to be very good, you're going to do very well academically, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
No crying, no complaints, no laziness,
No pressure.
no pressure.
No vulnerability.
No,
Yeah.
actually no vulnerability. No. You
Yeah.
fell over and you cried, no.
Suck
You
it
don't
up.
do that. You suck it up.
Mm.
If you're feeling sick, you're going to school.
And this is from your mum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And was your dad similar to that, or?
No. Dad was the softie.
Okay.
Mum ruled the way that we were in our house, how we kept our rooms, how we did our homework, what we ate. It was totally
Mhm.
mum, and it was really strict.
So how did your dad make you feel then?
Dad made me feel like I could go to him.
Yeah.
So,
Good cop, bad cop.
yeah, totally. But Dad was almost like good cop, not invisible cop, but mum was the rule.
The
like
police
what
force.
she,
Yeah.
mum was the police force. Whatever mum said goes. Like I remember unpacking groceries with my mum and, you know, dropping a jar of something. And it was that sort of strict thing where you don't play after school. You've got to do your homework. You're allowed to have afternoon tea. Then you do a chore. So I'd be cleaning, like I'd sweep the backyard or would dust bust the floor or like something, and then would help mum with the shopping or the washing. And I remember, I guess, kind of an example of the good cop, bad cop thing, which was like I dropped a jar of, like it was like a glass, it was a jar that broke, I remember, of like peanut butter or jam or something in the kitchen. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And mum like scolded me for dropping this jar. And I remember my dad had just gotten home from work and he came in and he was like, it's okay. It's all right. Linda, come here. And I remember running into his arms while my mum was, you know, cleaning up and being like, you're silly. You shouldn't have dropped that jar. You know, it was that kind of pressure and that expectation to always be a really, that you couldn't make mistakes and you always had to be I always had to be a really good girl. Really good.
Was the same standard applied to your brother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, you know, we were brought up to be, as you said, like not vulnerable, but good.
Yeah.
Obedient. At the end of the day, it was like we did really well at school because we knew how to follow rules.
Yeah.
And there was not so much a sense of like inflated pride when we would do like top of our class in tests, but there was an expectation that, well, of course I'm going to get 50
and was it
out of
almost
50.
relief when you did? Like
It was relief.
Fuck, I did.
Yeah, it was relief. It was the bar was here and oh, thank God I just hit it again.
Yeah.
And I hit it again. And then when you
Thank God I was perfect.
Yeah, thank God I was perfect. I kept doing it. Or I'd go to dance classes and it was the expectation of, or the pressure of, I need to be put in the front row of the dancing stage. My teacher has to choose me to be there. I have to get into the academic high school. I have to do well.
And what about when you weren't perfect?
Hasn't happened yet.
It remains to be seen. It was, I think mum's mellowed out a little bit more. But when we were growing up, you know, you'd get in primary school when you're, 10 or 11 years old, you'd get 48 out of 50 on a test and it would be, what were the two things you got wrong? So it wasn't great when you weren't perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be so hard.
Yeah.
Was it a happy childhood? Do you look back on it as a happy childhood?
Yeah, I think so because my brother and I were really happy together. We never fought. We really had each other's backs in that way. And it was happy. But I even saw this meme the other day and it was like, do strict parents realize the kinds of liars that they are creating?
Jeez, what's your algorithm is?
And I really related to that because I was
amazing.
like, I had a really happy childhood. You know, overall, I had a family that loved me. We had a roof over our heads. We had great food that we ate each night. I had a brother that never bullied me in any way. But I had a strict mum, and I lied about stuff. I
To avoid getting in trouble.
To avoid getting in trouble. It made me it made me sneakier than I would like to actually be.
Have been,
yeah.
Which is ironic considering like the whole thing was like being good, but then you're forced to be like a liar.
You're forced to be,
speak.
because you kind of want to have this perception of being perfect. So I didn't want to confide in anything that I would ever be struggling with. I didn't want to ask for $10 for Ryan's birthday at school, so I would like lie and say that we had an excursion the next day and could I please have $12, or, you know, just it made me happy but kind of deceptive because I just wanted to keep up this facade of being a really good girl all the time.
Yeah. And have you spoken to her about all this since? Like, no.
No, because it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still there, and I don't think that will ever change. That is the way that not just my mum, but I think sometimes a lot of immigrant parents are wired, or
Definitely, yeah.
you know, I've got a lot of other kind of Chinese friends and daughters that have that same sort of fraught relationship with their mum, where there's so much love, there's a fair bit of guilt, and there's a lot of expectation to be really good because you're getting the life that we couldn't get.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's this safety in that there's an unconditional love and support there that I will always have. But there's also this, I would be scared to come with a problem because it would show that I've got a weakness somewhere. So when I've kind of confided in my mum about things that I've struggled with or that I've gone through, I generally, and I still do this, I do it after the fact.
Once you've sorted it out.
Once I've sorted it out, I'll say, oh, you know, last year I had a really hard time and I ended up, you know, finding a psychologist or having to do this thing with my health. And it's all good now, so don't worry about it. But this is what happened. So we can have this kind of bonding moment.
Yeah.
But when I'm actually going through it, I hide it. I hide the imperfection.
And I wonder if it's also so you can prove that you fixed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon,
In like seeing a psychologist, did you go down any of the pathways of like thinking about like why she, you know, because it's probably a pretty common parent thing, particularly like you said.
Yeah,
like
they want the
parents.
best for you, and
but have you ever thought about like, or as you've gotten older, because this is certainly the case for me, but once you see your parents as people, not superheroes, but you know, you go like, oh, this is maybe why you are that way, or this is why you don't, like in your mum's case, like maybe vulnerability, she steers away, or hard work is important, perfection, all that sort of stuff.
I think she's wired to be a very controlled and sort of controlling disciplinary character, and the ability to see outside of that is probably kind of limited.
And what? But have you thought about why, or not so much?
I know that she's been that way since she was a kid. She's told me about, you know, she grew up one of 6 in a really small village in Malaysia where they were extremely poor. And even in those years growing up, she would tell me when she was 5 or 6, she'd go, Linda, I went to school every day and I would come home and I would wash my socks. I would wash my socks and I would make sure they were perfect every day when I went to school. Make sure my hair was perfect. I'd make sure my shirt was perfect, and there'd be other kids running around the village and they would be dirty or they wouldn't have their shoes on properly, and I always made sure. There's something in her that was always been that sort of perfect or not good enough sort of feeling, and she has expected that of her children. And I'm so grateful for that in one way, because I know that there are values in that have made me really successful and really ambitious to be like, oh, I really do want to do well in this field, and I do want to be successful in this way and work hard. But for me, as I've gotten older, I've realized that there is a line between just being good for the sake of being good. And when I cross that line into I'm being too accommodating or like people pleasing in a way, or choosing things because they're good, they're seen as good, or they're going to be good for other people but not for me, that's a line that I'm still figuring out where it is. Like with each decision that I make as an adult, I actually find it quite hard to figure out what my honest decision needs to be. In the last couple of years, I've had to actually go, how can I make decisions that make me happy and not just right or good?
Tick all the as many boxes as possible.
Yeah. What's going to be the best
Other
decision for all the other people involved?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, definitely.
So many bells are going off. This is like so where I'm at in the last
It's really hard.
Yeah.
To not feel like you're going to disappoint someone.
Yeah, well, for not to make it about me, but as a quick tangent, but it's for me, I think it's also partly about being impressive to people. Like for this like weird want for people to think that I'm really good at something or to think that I'm really funny. And so when I meet someone new, I'll like, you know, try really hard to, and not in a show off way, but I've realized recently that it does matter to my ego probably that whatever person thinks like, he was great. What a great guy. You know, whereas like, but the people who like my family or people like Jam, my girlfriend, like people who I know, you know, think I'm great. I don't need to work as hard to impress them. If you know what I mean. So then they kind of like suffer or get I sacrifice those relationships more in this sort of like weird egoic need to be impressive to people for whatever reason.
So you might put energy into. You'll direct your energy to people you don't know as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because for whatever reason, it's important that they walk away and go like, he's a great guy. A great guy.
Yep.
What does it matter? Who cares?
But it's interesting with that because I'm the same, and in a way, it makes us really good at our jobs. It made me really a really good daily presenter because I could shaft any shit to the side no matter what I was going through. I could just compartmentalize it and I'd turn on a mic every single day and be a good presenter. And I could just show up for the audience and go. And it wasn't even what I've realized is it's not even about stepping into a host role or making a new friend or a new acquaintance or something and creating an impression where they think that I'm great or that I'm good or that I'm charming. It's that they don't not like me. It's that kind of relief.
Yeah.
It's not getting 100% on a test because I want to get 100%. It's that I don't want to get 99.
Yeah.
It's that I don't want someone to walk away and go, she was a bit of a dickhead. Like,
which is kind of interesting because you're now, I mean, obviously you've done radio for a long time, but now you DJ.
Yeah.
And like, I've never been a DJ, believe it or not. But from what I understand, such a big part of that job is constantly pleasing the audience.
Totally.
Like
it's you make careers out of it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you've got to play that, and if they
the
stop
room,
dancing,
literally reading the room.
Yeah, I've got to play a song that they'll all like. It's just like, and then that song ends in 3 minutes. Like I've got to now do it again, and you're constantly, it's interesting.
And the validation that you get when you walk away from a meeting or from a social event or from a DJ set, going, did a good job. They were impressed by me. I didn't fuck it up. That's what my thing is like. I didn't fuck it up.
Yeah.
Fucking killed it.
Do you think you're always, because I sometimes feel like I'm just one not gig, because I don't do gigs, but one moment away from like people realizing, oh yeah,
you're a fraud.
I'm a fraud. Yeah, and I fucked it up and now everyone knows. Is there that in there, or is that not really your thing? That just could be me projecting.
It's probably you projecting. See, I'm
you got that right. We all think that, don't we?
Yeah.
We all think I'm about to fuck up.
This is the gig.
I just fucked up.
It's not so much that it's one gig away from failure. It's just that I need to just keep hitting the bar at the top so people keep thinking that it's, oh yeah, good. You expect it to be good? Okay, it's going to just keep being good.
Yeah, and is that bar moves constantly?
I think it stays at the same level, but it just depends. Yeah, perfection.
Yeah.
But it just depends on the medium.
Yeah.
So if
okay.
it's,
Yeah.
oh, you need to write this article, it needs to be there. Or if you
Yeah.
need to edit this podcast thing or do an interview, it needs to be really good.
Yeah.
So if you did, for example, like when you were doing nightly radio,
Yeah.
and you did like what you did like 10 shows and one of them was bad, are you focusing on the bad one?
I've learnt that in order to be a good presenter, you have to be able to move on really quickly because otherwise I would fixate on that. There would be a deep character element in me that would want to fixate on that.
Yeah.
And the way that it would generally work when I was doing radio each day wouldn't even be like I would have a bad show. It'd be like I'd have a bad moment. So you do all these mic breaks every few minutes in between the songs, you pop up, whether you talk about some music news thing or you do an interview or you're just talking about a record. If I would do something where I would stuff up, make a mistake, get a fact wrong, accidentally say someone's name wrong, I used to beat myself up about it so badly. I would finish the mic break, I'd hit play on the song, and for that 2 minutes or whatever, I would sit there and just be stewing and self-hating, and I'd go, you stuffed up.
Yeah.
Everybody listening has heard you stuff up. If you refresh the text line right now, you're going to see people saying they hate you. I bet that's the time that Ryan's gotten into his car and he's turned it on, and that's the one show that he's heard of yours, and he's going to think you're a freaking idiot. And I would sit there and I'd go, you have really done bad. And then I'd go.
And take it personally.
And I'd take it personally. And then I learnt over the years of doing it for so long that the only way that I could get out of that hole would be to do a amazing mic break the next time that I went on.
Wow.
And that would be the only way I could get out of it would be, all right, Linda, move on. Like I remember once stuffing up and I'd said some wrong music news thing and I'd accidentally said something that was offensive because I'd read out the wrong line, and I just wanted to crawl into a hole and die and never come back up again. And the only way I got out of it was going, you're going to play one extra song, it's going to go for 4.5 minutes, and you're going to come back and you're just going to do the best mic break and you're just going to fake it until you make it. You're going to put a massive smile on your face, you're going to read out this text, you're going to talk to this caller, you're going to do something that is worthy of a show reel.
Yeah.
And you're going to do it, you're going to feel better. And that was why I did it. That was how.
Well, mate, unhealthy.
It's an unhealthy amount of like self-criticism, but it pushes you through.
Makes you very good at your job.
It makes you very good.
So another sort of the other side of that coin is, so like, was it last year, Josh, that you and I went up to for the awards, the podcast awards?
I was going to bring this up actually. Yeah. Go for it.
So last year there was the Australian Podcast Awards or whatever, and we were up for, the Imperfects was up for awards. Can't remember who won. I don't think it was us. But we were not. And so Linda, you made a podcast called Tough Love, which is brilliant, and we'll put a link to it. It's just so great, which you made during the pandemic. And so for those who haven't heard of it or heard it at all, it's essentially about you when you were about to go to LA and live with your boyfriend Magnus, and then the pandemic happened, and then you had to move in with your parents, who we're hearing so much about, your parents for the first time when you're in your 30s. And so that was up for awards, and it won like 2 awards or something.
Who's counting?
Your mum.
She actually is, and I'll tell you why, because she's got the awards.
Yes.
On her mantelpiece.
So okay, so
she's in it. She's one of the stars of the
She's in
show.
it, yeah.
She's.
So okay, so you're up for awards, and I'm only asking you this because of what we're talking about, where it's like this bar of perfection. So when you won, what do you feel?
When I won with that,
when you won the Tough Love award,
what did I feel? That's a weird one because that was the first time that I let myself be imperfect in a sort of perfect way. Yeah, it's kind of strange because that was the first time in my career that I ever let myself be vulnerable and actually be me. And I remember getting when we were nominated for that, and then when I won that, I think because that project had come from such an emotional place, it was different. It was different to just doing a good job on some big broadcast. It was different. It felt like it made the hardships of the subject matter not worth it, but
affirming or something.
Yeah, it felt like you're okay. Like I think I remember having a moment where I thought back to myself in the throes of, and friends and family that had been through similar hard things in the throes of 2020 or 2021, where it was really hard to find hope in places. And I think I had a moment where I thought back to the Linda before I'd made the podcast, but when stuff was the most uncertain that it ever had been. And I think I remember thinking, I feel so sorry for that Linda that didn't know that it was going to be okay. And now I know that it was okay and that you actually made something that was more important and more valuable to you out of all the other stuff put together, all of the other stuff where there's heaps of listeners or, it felt really affirming in that way. And I think it was the first time that I felt like I'd won something without the expectation of winning, because it was an unexpected thing to do in the first place. It wasn't like, well, Linda's doing a school exam, so she better get the top of her class. It was like
you were out of your comfort zone.
I was out of my comfort zone so far that I was out of the realm of, well, I'm expecting that this is going to do well. So it did feel like a true bonus.
Yeah, nice.
How did it feel? Did it dawn on you at the time that you were being rewarded or awarded for your imperfections and your struggles? Because your persona on air before that was, you're like, this will be perfect, this will be perfect.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're being recognised for your imperfections. Did it dawn on you at that time?
It's yes, in a way, because the other thing about that project was that it was almost just as meticulous in its in the execution of it.
Understand. Yeah.
So while the subject matter was imperfect, it was like
You're still able to do it perfectly.
I was still as meticulous about the music needs to start there. Can we edit that breath out there? Can we change this person around? That scene doesn't work there.
I love the editing that you did, like that you going for a run and describing your body as an aging sack of shit.
Yes.
And then very funny in the back of the hear going, oh God, as you're running off like that.
Yeah. So there was, while the subject matter allowed me to have that vulnerability and that flexibility like never before, it gave me a new kind of vessel to pour energy and perfectionism into.
Yeah.
So without wanting to get too like meta about it all, but like that was a project that was your own project. You were vulnerable, and it's beautiful, it's brilliant, but you could control it. You could control the edit.
I could still control the vulnerability.
But so now, where you're like on a show where you're being vulnerable, talking about your life, like how does it feel when you won't have control over this edit? Not if I can help it.
I feel good. I almost feel like I've ripped the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Ripped the Band-Aid off.
Been
and
awarded
now,
for it.
Been awarded for it. And now I don't care. I'm like, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's real. It's
Would you have ever done this
genuine.
before Tough
Never.
Love? Yeah.
Never. And the other thing that I didn't say about not doing breakfast radio was that I had said to Triple J, like, I'm not going to be able to get up early. It's not going to happen. And the other reason that I know that I would not have forced myself to do that shift was because I knew back then that if I was to do breakfast radio, I have to talk about personal stories every day.
I had the exact same same experience.
And that was it. When I was doing a new music releases show, when I'm interviewing people, the focus is on the music, the focus is on them. But I knew that if I was to say yes to
It becomes about you.
it becomes about
Yeah.
me. It becomes about me as a vulnerable person that's going to share funny stories, that's going to talk about my partner or like whatever it is that I want to share, but it has to be personal. And I had a real sticking point on that. Now I'm like, I don't care. I've like dived in head first. I can see where the value is in it, but it's hard to get to.
It is, yeah, it is really hard. I mean, it probably is an age thing. I think for me, definitely you kind of, and maybe because it sounds like when you left Triple J, you went through that period of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you had such security and like identity and praise every night, and like on the coolest radio station, everyone's like, yeah, and then but then it's almost like you have to like dip down and go into that area of uncertainty and be like, oh shit, what if I don't know? What if like losing control, that kind of order versus chaos situation where it's like if everything's ordered and everything's like as it should be and how I wanted it to be, then life is great. But hang on, what do I do if there's a little bit of chaos, a little bit of uncertainty? This is not me. What do I do? And that's when for me, that's when you start like questioning things and being like, oh, hang on, shit. If I get this, that won't necessarily make me happy. So what am I doing? Who the fuck am I?
Yeah. Like, what do I do when the obedience is gone?
Mm-hmm.
When, oh, you've asked me to turn this thing in. Now I need to go and do this. Like, I can deliver on all these points throughout the day because I need to do my show, then I need to do this, and I'm going to be on this podcast, I'm going to do this other thing. When those expectations from other outside forces are gone,
yeah,
who am I? Where's the purpose? Who can I obey if I don't have a manager breathing down my neck and going, I need you to deliver this thing by 5 p.m. It's hard.
Well, that Triple J job, a perfect job, because literally there is like countdown to the second. Like you're following orders constantly.
Totally.
And it's kind of comforting. I think I've got the same brain. It's like it's sort of comforting to be. Often I'm just like, just tell me what to do. Remove all choice, and just tell me the one thing I have to do. And I'll just do that, and that's fine.
Yeah, and I'll fucking nail it.
I can't get to that, but I wish I was at that point.
No, that's who you are. I'm just like, yeah, you just, I can't make the decision, but you tell me what to do, and I'll fucking do it well.
Yeah.
Great, done.
Amazing.
Can I ask about so there must have been a point in time when you decided what I'd love to do in my life is be a presenter on radio, and you've been unbelievable at it. And for someone like me.
Some might say perfect.
Yep. So, and that's an incredible job to choose. Was it enough for your mum? Was your mum expecting you to do something more around, I'm really stereotyping here, but like medicine or law or accounting or something like that? I'm guessing you did very well at school as well. So was it,
more traditional career, yeah.
How did your mum feel about your career choice?
I think I know she felt really proud because I was a little high achiever and
at school.
And I was very driven in knowing that I wanted to be a presenter. And they all thought that it was going to be a newsreader because I would sit and I would read aloud, or I would pretend to be hosting a news thing or a radio thing and record my own voice using our cassette player through school and then through high school. And I was always good at public speaking and things like that. And I think because I was quite driven in that way, and because if you think about being a journalist or being a news presenter in those traditional kind of roles' eyes, it's seen as a very respectful thing. And the other thing is that my parents are vain. And at the end, like I hate to say it, but at the end of the day for them, maybe I'm putting words in their mouth, but for them having, a presentable, pretty daughter that was very good at public speaking, that could maybe be a newsreader, was a very esteemed sort of.
Still ticked all the
It still ticked all of the boxes.
You're going to be in the paper at some point.
I'm going to be in the paper. I remember
they can show the paper to their friends.
It was like in year 3, when you get exercises from your English teacher and they say, oh, write a newspaper article.
Mm.
I remember writing a newspaper article for my teacher in year 3, and I remember her reading it out to the class, and on my school report wrote something like, I think Linda's got a future in journalism or news reading. I remember my parents seeing that and going, oh,
Yeah.
that's our girl.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Okay.
That's our girl.
Well, it's sort of like it's still in the world of like, like esteemed, respectable professions. Like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
making a difference and you'll be famous.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
It's like if the things of, medicine or law are very, showing face as a very presentable career, being a presenter is the most presentable version of that,
Yeah.
where people aspire or whatever
Yeah.
to be like you. And I notice it even these days. It's the thing that my mum is so, proud of the values that I have as a person, and that I'm a good daughter, and that I'm generous, and I'm a really nice aunt to my nephews. But I also know there's a real sense of pride in the fact that my career is public facing,
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and that she can go, I ran into my friend at Salsa the other day and she said she saw you on the news. It's
Yeah.
Of
there's a
course.
materialistic, really strong bond that's there that is,
Oh,
celebrity.
when I was in when I was in the Jewish news, my grandparents' heads exploded. Like they couldn't.
Yes.
What? The Jewish news? Like
Yes.
being in that newspaper was because that's what all of their friends read. So
Yes.
it doesn't really matter what it was for. It's just that I was like in it was, you've been affirmed by a respectable organization, and they've said that you're important enough or special enough to take up 2 inches of space in the paper. Mm.
It's strange,
Yeah,
but it's
It's
true.
understandable.
Mm.
Yeah.
This is I guess it's kind of a personal question, and it's totally fine if you don't want to go there. Just while you're being vulnerable, I thought I'd throw this one in.
Yeah.
Do
You go
you-
while she's down.
What's the most amount of chips you've ever eaten?
Slightly different vein. Do you want to be a mum? Have you thought about being a mum? And if so, have you thought about the kind of mum that you will be?
Great question. 2 answers. First, have I thought about being a mum? Yes. I've frozen my eggs twice. I've definitely thought about being a mum.
Like the same eggs twice, or
Yeah,
like double
I've
frozen?
double frozen.
Refrozen.
It's like when you have thrice fried chips.
Oh,
It's like that. You just
Yeah.
triple freeze them. They just last for a really long
Crispy
time.
kids.
Now I've done like 2 rounds of like egg
Yes,
freezing where you just
okay.
get the
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my partner and I speak about it often. And in terms of what sort of mum I'll be, I've thought about that a fair bit as well, in terms of there are things that I love and admire about my mum that have made me the person that I am, and my brother the way that he is. And I don't want to lose all of that. I don't want to be the most lenient opposite version of what my mum was, because my kid will be a total dickhead. But that sense of pressure and expectation, and in particular the fact that when I grew up, I think as I was saying, like I didn't feel comfortable enough to confide in my mum for fear of being scolded. Did I say scalded? Scalded.
You said scalded.
Scalded.
Well, then
Yeah.
you said scalded, but
Scalded,
only in
yes.
questioning
Yeah,
whether or not
yeah.
you said scalded or
Yeah.
scalded. Yeah.
I would like to be the sort of mum that can encourage in a different way
Okay.
through whatever it ends up being, positive reinforcement, whatever those cool jazzy words are, but just motivation that's not through fear of letting your parents down.
So perhaps a really nice combo of your mum and your dad.
Yeah. And I think that's also why my brother and I have turned out to be somewhat balanced, because I think if we had 2 of my mum, I'd be there'd be a Netflix show about how I'm a total con artist.
Why con artist?
I don't know, because I would just
Yeah,
become,
yeah.
deceptive. Because already as a teenager, I was, lying about these weird
But I feel
things.
like that's what a con artist would say. A con artist would come out swinging saying they're not a con artist.
Yes, very
this is
true.
the long con. This is the long con.
Yeah. Linda
The long
Longcon.
con.
Linda long con. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I definitely want that balance to, in particular, I think about if I had a daughter, the relationship that I would have with her would be very, kind of different to the relationship. Oh, I'd hope in a way that it wouldn't be laden with this. It's almost like this two-sided coin of like guilt and expectation and love with my mum, where I've got so much love for her, but it's so wrapped up in a guilt of not being good enough for her that I need to find a way to not have that element exist.
Yeah.
That you can push someone to be the best version of themselves through love and encouragement in a way that doesn't have this added layer of expectation and guilt.
And you have the privilege of growing up in a different time, different generation to your mum. So you kind of have like a completely different outlook.
Set of pressures.
Yeah.
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 All that kind of stuff.
I'm guessing, just from what I've learnt about your mum, she's probably not already a fan of the Imperfects podcast.
I'm so
stupid
sorry,
idea.
Janet, we love you.
Well, that's my question. Will she listen to this interview?
Probably
No.
already a subscriber,
No.
wouldn't you? No.
No, seriously.
But
No.
as in, obviously she wouldn't find it herself, but you won't say to her
Hey, Mum, listen to this.
where I talk about you for an
Talk
hour.
about you. No, I'll just say, hey, Mum, you know how I've got that book deal? There's a book that's coming out in the middle of the next year. It's a lot about you.
Oh, you're writing a book?
I am.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
right. The fear of God is in me.
Is that the title?
That's it. Yeah, pretty much. The fear of Janet is in me.
Wow.
This could be a nice
No.
warm-up for her. To,
No, I think to be honest, if I sent her a podcast, she'd probably listen to it for a few minutes and then she'd go, "Oh, it was very long.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand. And I just wanted to hear the bits where you were talking and there was other people talking."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like if she got to know the show, she would appreciate the other people.
I go, here's a really good episode with someone else. Now listen to me. No, I'm sorry to say she would not.
That's okay.
She would not listen.
Sorry, Hugh.
Sorry, Hugh.
no, it wasn't. That wasn't what I wanted to know.
It wasn't you saying, do you reckon
Can we get another listener?
Can we get another subscriber?
That wasn't it. It was. Well, I'm just fascinated with the dynamics of people with their parents, and when they do something like this, knowing that you've talked about your mum, it's out there. Does she then want to hear it or not? I guess, or do you want her to hear it or not? Is more what I'm. Always good to have an extra listener, but that wasn't.
It's always good to have an extra listener. She, you know how we were saying, she doesn't really let herself be vulnerable in that way. She's very busy and constantly distracted and busying herself with grandkids or friends or the salsa club community that she is a part of, where she runs salsa club nights.
Love it.
But she is not the sort of person that sits and is still and
Yeah.
would go, I'm going to listen to a podcast and I'm going to learn more about my daughter. No, she would, if she wants to learn more about me, she'll call me and she'll go, you should refinance your mortgage, or your fringe is looking not quite right. Go do that. There's
practical reasons.
It's very practical. It's a very
Functional.
much functional, practical, pragmatic, problem solving. There's not a deeper kind of vulnerable conversation. Like we don't have conversations that are deep like that. It's actually very hard to.
Can you see through all this that with all these things that she's doing, she's calling you to say that and
Yeah.
this sort of the strict discipline to it all, do you have a sense inside of you that it all comes from a loving place, or has it just been so long of so much time of just it's hard to see that?
The only reason I can put up with it is because I know that it comes from a loving place.
Yeah.
It drives me mad being nitpicked as an adult.
Have you ever pushed back?
I have attempted to sometimes, but it's really hard
Oh, yeah.
because she is so set in her ways and I think there was one, and she wouldn't necessarily acknowledge or understand that sort of interaction.
Yeah.
There was one time about 10 years ago where I was going overseas to New York and she took my passport without me knowing for safekeeping. Took it away without me knowing.
When you said safekeeping, you did like
I
quotation
did little
marks.
quotation marks because it's that sort of thing of I know what's best for you and
Okay.
you don't quite know,
Oh, yeah.
let me take care of this for you. This comes from a loving place. Her intentions were so genuine. She knew I was going overseas at some point in the lead up to it. She saw where my passport was at my place and she took it for safekeeping with, I guess, the intention that before I went overseas, she would give it back to me and go, here's your passport. Don't worry, I've had it. Anyway, she forgot that she'd taken it. And then it got to the morning of my flight and I opened up my drawer where my passport should have been and it wasn't there.
Oh.
And I thought that I'd lost my passport, missed my flight. We eventually found it. The next day, my brother found it, funnily enough, where she'd taken it to his apartment and
Framed him.
framed him. She'd taken it to his apartment and put it for safekeeping in a cupboard that was there. And my brother ended up finding it and he was like, what the fuck is your passport doing at my house? Didn't you miss your flight yesterday to New York? Come and pick it up, get on another flight.
Yeah.
And I remember confronting her about that in terms of a pushing back, as you asked, like this controlling has gotten too far. I am in, my adult years and I can take care of myself and you need to stop doing this. And it was the first time she has ever said, or that I can remember her saying, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that.
Oh, that would have been big.
It was. I remember
Yeah.
exactly where we were. I remember I waited until I came back from New York because I was like, I can't deal with this right now. Give me my passport. I'm getting on my plane. I went and spent a few weeks in New York. It was like this long-awaited trip that I'd planned. Went and spent Christmas in New York, came back and then went for coffee with my mum. I remember in like the David Jones food court. And I remember sitting there and she had her back against the wall and I was like, you know what you did was wrong.
She literally had her back against
She
the wall.
literally had her back against the wall. That was it. I was like, Janet, sit down.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what you did was wrong. And you cannot try and overly control that stuff. And I felt awful saying it. That was the thing. I just felt so guilty even pushing back on this thing that she had done that was wrong. And I remember her not even being able to look at me in the eye and going, I'm sorry, you're right. I shouldn't have done that. And from that moment on, it was a much more kind of subdued, loving version of Janet. But then it comes back because that is the way that she is hardwired. So it still happens now. There are examples like that happen again and again. And
You broke the matrix for a second.
I broke the matrix for just a second.
Yeah.
Her spoon was bent.
Yes.
Like I saw her crack.
Yeah.
But then it came back. And now I realize that is the way that she is. And there are ways that I can kind of compromise and jigsaw around that showing of love so that we can have a really loving, healthy relationship and I can use it to my advantage and I can, she can help. She can be really helpful. She can be so helpful when you give her a purpose and say, Mum, I need your help with doing this. But when you don't, that's when she'll look for things to help with or nitpick or whatever. So I've learnt, a better way of dealing with that dynamic.
This is maybe a strange question, but when did you move out of home?
Funnily enough, it was later than my friends did because they all moved out of home, as soon as we hit uni, they were getting share house. I did it later than my friends did, but way earlier than my family did because my family, my cousins, you only ever move out of home when you are buying a home or when you are getting married and buying a home.
Yeah.
It's like those are the two circumstances.
Yeah.
So I moved out of home when I was 23, 24, and that was because I was moving to London. Otherwise, I would have just stayed at home.
Yeah. I only asked that because it's I mean, I imagine any parent, it would be kind of a weird thing when your kid who's been there the whole time, and especially if like part of your, I feel like we've talked about this on the podcast before, like as a parent, it becomes like a role. Your role in the world is like a parent. Your identity is a parent. And then when your kid moves out, it's like, well, now what do I do? Because that was what I did. I looked after that person.
That was my career.
Yeah. And then now they've decided I've been fired essentially, or I've gone very part-time.
That's exactly what it is. It's going. That was my brother and I were the purpose, were the career that she was dedicated to. And then once we left, and she said this to me, having a son and having a daughter is different. Your son goes away and they move on, and then they have a woman in their life. Normally, is what she would say. She's like, he moved on, he had a girlfriend, and then he had a wife, and then that woman is responsible for him, and the mother and the daughter will always be tethered together.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah.
Wow.
So me moving overseas, when I moved to London, it was really hard for her and for me as well, but, it was really hard for her to see me go. And then even now with me moving to LA, that's really hard.
Yeah.
Really, really hard. And the prospect that I might be a mum in a country that she's not in is extremely difficult.
Yeah. That wasn't on the plan for her.
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's a long tether, isn't it?
It's a very long tether.
The umbilical cord to stretch a long way.
Yeah.
You know that it gets cut though. Yeah.
Do you say to each other that you love each other? And if so, is it a comfortable thing to do?
Always.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
always.
That's
because
nice.
like you said, everything is done for the family. She does everything with the intention of her kids or her grandkids. Every text message ends with love you.
Okay.
Every interaction ends with love you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every single one, which is great. Even if it's a text message that's like, hey, Linda.
Your passport's at your brother's house.
Your passport's at your brother's house. Or, when I was over at your house, the exhaust fan above the stove was not clean enough. Love you. It's like everything is there. I remember once
as a softener.
Oh, my God. I remember once getting a text, and I remember being on air, and it was like this WhatsApp message that came up, and I went, oh, crap, it's from Janet. What's she saying? And I was like, hi, Linda. Oh, my God. This is so embarrassing.
Hi,
it's
Linda.
great. It's like, hi, Linda. I noticed when we were at lunch the other day, there was a couple of nose hairs poking out of your nostrils. You really should be trimming them every 2.5 weeks. That's how I keep mine in check. Wow. Love you.
Love you. If you just clip those hairs.
And there's this fear, 70% of me is like, oh my God, this is so annoying. I'm going to die. This is so please leave me alone. And then 30% of me is like, I just can't wait to go home and get those little manicured scissors out of my drawer.
You kind of appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I'm like, well, at least she's looking out for me.
Yeah.
2.5 weeks as well. That's
how she keeps hers in check.
Yeah.
How do you remember that?
Yeah, you need to figure out your own schedule.
Yeah. Thereabouts.
He sets an alarm on his clock every 2.5 weeks.
Must be done.
Amazing.
But in short, it's very, very much comes from love and it ends with love. So that's what I guess
and
keeps
reminded
it there.
of in the process every time.
Yeah. I'm like, it comes from love. You just got to let her have her fun.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Oh, that's nice. Linda Marigliano, thank you so much. Your podcast is Tough Love, which is so good. I think if you've gotten to this point of the episode,
multi-award winning.
Multi-award winning.
That's right.
But if you've listened to the whole episode, you'll definitely love Tough Love.
Thank you.
And we'll link to it. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
wow,
thanks
I'm
for
going to go
joining
and
us.
listen to that podcast. That sounds great.
It's yours.
Excellent. Cool.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Linda.
If this episode has been triggering for you, we strongly recommend Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is hosted and co-produced by Hugh Van Cuylenberg, Brian Shelton and Josh Van Cuylenberg. This episode was produced by Bridget Northeast, filmed by Andy Poole and edited by George Martin. A special thanks to Dr. M for her expertise and guidance. We'd also like to thank the Resilience Project for their ongoing support.